Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Cordant, and today we're going to be talking about Total War Attila. So this is the recent Total War game that I've been playing on my quest to experience all Total War games in the franchise, or at least most of them. I have done a couple of videos on this topic already in the channel. I made one for Warhammer 3, one for Shogun 2, and one also for Shogun 2's expansion Fall of the Samurai. It is now time for Attila. So just to give you a brief intro and some context for the, why I'm doing this and what the motivation is for this video series, I got into the Total War franchise quite late. The first Total War game that I properly played was Total War Warhammer 3, which is quite recent. The only other Total War game that came out since was Pharaoh. I haven't tried that one yet, but Warhammer 3 is still one of the most recent Total War games. And once I got the hang of it, once I really understood how to play the campaign gameplay, how to engage in diplomacy, and how to actually deal with the combat, I really enjoyed the style of game. I love Total War Warhammer 3, I love the Total War style, and I will even go so far as to say that Total War games are now one of my favorite type of game to play currently. Maybe I'm just getting older, I don't know, but I really enjoy Total War. So with that, I wanted to see what else I've been missing throughout these years, because there have been Total War games for, I think, over 20 or 25 years, so a lot of games I didn't check out. And that's what I'm doing now, right? So I started with Shogun 2, and now it's time to go for Attila. This is another one of the titles that a lot of people speak highly of. It's not as unanimous as, let's say, the Warhammer series or Shogun 2, but there's still a lot of people speaking quite well about the game, and I do enjoy the time period and the type of units you control, so I wanted to give this one a try. To also explain my objectives and my goals for each of these experiences before I do one of these videos, the first thing I do on any Total War game that I'm going to try is I want to complete the tutorial section. In this case they just call it the prologue, and that's to get accustomed to the game, because sometimes the gameplay is a little bit different, you have different mechanics, stuff like that, and just to get accustomed to it. And I will give a highlight here for the prologue in Attila. I think this was the best tutorial experience I've had in any of the Total War games I've tried. I will say in Total War Warhammer 3, I didn't really enjoy the prologue. You have like a mini campaign with Kislev, but I felt it was very incomplete, and I just did not enjoy the mini campaign at all. For Shogun 2, there's not much to say. It's not really a mini campaign, it's just a couple of different levels, so you can get accustomed to different gameplay mechanics. But here in Attila, you do have a proper mini campaign. You have the Gothic War split into two chapters. You have the Battle of Olbia, and then you have the Hunnic invasion, and this is a very cool tutorial. It teaches you a lot of the combat fundamentals, it teaches you a lot about the campaign gameplay and a couple of new mechanics like migration and nomadic tribes and stuff like that. And the mini campaign is also very well done. It literally is like if you were to engage in an actual campaign, but on a smaller scale and teaching you about the game. So really well done. I think it's a really cool experience. I would say if you are interested in Total War, especially on Attila, and you want to give it a try, I definitely recommend playing to the prologue. It's a really fun experience and very good to start out. After finishing the prologue, my next main objective is to go for the main campaign. In this case we have the Grand Campaign here. We also have the Last Roman and Age of Charlemagne, but these are DLCs. So I like to go for the main campaign first, and my main objective is complete successfully a campaign on legendary difficulty with any of the available factions. Those are my goals before I do one of these videos. So the purpose for these videos is to share my thoughts about the game, about the experience I had playing the game. You can kind of look at this as like a brief review, let's say. I want to go over what I think about the game, what I find to be good or bad about the game, what I think could have been better, and I'm also going to be making some comparisons between this game and the other Total War games I've played. So in this case, the Warhammer franchise, and the Shogun 2 franchise as well. At the end of the video, I also like to give a brief campaign overview, because I like talking about, how the campaign started, how it went, with what issues we had, and how we eventually led it into victory. So, for this particular game, I went for the prologue, really cool experience, and then for the grand campaign, I went for the Norsemen. So we have a bunch of different factions. Each faction has a couple of sub-factions, let's say. I think the Norsemen were actually part of a DLC, I'm not really sure, but I went for the Norsemen, no particular reason, I just like the idea of playing with Vikings. It's not the type of gameplay style I usually have on these games. I thought it was going to be a fun new thing for me to try out. So for the Norsemen, we have two different factions. We have the Danes, we have the Jutes, and we have the Geats. I went for the Jutes. They all share the same cultural trait, which is we get more income from sacking, looting, and raiding, which are types of actions I don't really do. So it's kind of like a motivation for me to try something different. And for the faction trait, what they have is extra income for every enemy unit destroyed, which I really liked. And we also get an additional 200% from raising settlements, another type of action I very rarely do. So again, motivation for me to try out something different. In terms of the available factions, we all start on year 395 AD. I think it's the same thing for everyone. Yep. And in terms of difficulty, we start with an initial challenge of hard. And the difficulty challenge, as far as I could tell, it goes from easy all the way to very hard and legendary. Okay, so in my case I started on hard, which apparently should be like mid difficulty for this game. So let's actually go for the start campaign here, just so we can look at how things started. But again, I'm gonna leave the campaign overview for the end of the video. We're gonna cover just, my thoughts and review of the game first. Just gonna skip over the cutscenes here.
The world is changing.
And there we are. So this was my first screen testing out Total War Attila after playing the prologue. We start as the Jutes. We start in the settlement of Alabu. And we are neighboring our other Viking friends. One thing to note, by the way, I didn't know this initially, but I read up on it after I looked something online about the game. These are not actually Vikings. These are apparently like the Viking forefathers. At this time period, there was no such thing as Vikings. They only came later. But for the sake of simplicity, I am just going to refer to them as Vikings, because even if we look at them, at their traits, it even says Viking Raiders. So I'll just call them Vikings, and I'll hope you don't mind that. So yeah, we begin over here. We're neighboring the Danes and the Geats. And if we look at the overall map, this would be, Northern Europe. And I'm not that much of an historian, or I don't really know also a lot about geography. But my understanding is that this right here is the region of Denmark. And then up here we have like the bottom of Sweden, and this would be Norway. You cannot play in the area of Norway, and we only have this bottom portion of Sweden here. We don't have the upper portion. But yeah, we start in the area of Norway. The province is called Skansa. I'm guessing it's the Scandinavian area. And this is where we begin over here. Kind of like something of an island type area with this little island in the middle. And I guess we are considered to be like a hard starting position, because we are somewhat surrounded. And once we do get into the mainland, we are, surrounded or neighboring a lot of different factions. So I guess the first thing I want to mention is this is my third Total War game. Technically it's like my sixth or seventh, but I'm coupling games of the same series in just one. So there are 3 total Warhammer games. I've played them all, but I'm just going to count them as one. And then Shogun 2 and Fall of the Samurai. So this would be my third Total War game. With that in mind, I want to begin by speaking about the map. So the campaign map is what we see here, right? We have the entirety, well, almost the entirety of Europe. We have the British Isles. We have the Iberian Peninsula over here with Portugal and Spain. Well, at this time, this was not Portugal or Spain, but whatever. We have the area of France, Germany, Italy, blah, blah, blah. Eastern Europe, the area of Russia. And then we also have this portion of Northern Africa. And then we also have something of the Middle East over here with Armenia and Syria and stuff like that. I don't know. I think this campaign map is amazing. I think it really is amazing. I didn't expect to like this campaign map as much as I did. Maybe because, you know, I'm from Europe. I was born right over there in Portugal. And, you know, it's nothing really new to me, so I didn't expect this to be as interesting to me as, let's say, the islands of Japan for Shogun 2, but I actually prefer this map more. I guess I just like seeing the European countries or the European regions and being able to play in them. I like the strategic elements that this map provides as well. In the same style that we have in Shogun 2, we have the different islands, like the British Islands are naturally a more defensive position, because if people want to invade, they have to go by sea. You have choke points, like over here in this peninsula. The same thing for Italy, a couple of islands over here as well. So there's a lot of strategic elements to the gameplay in the campaign map, and it's just an overall enjoyable campaign map to explore. So I really like this map. Something to also mention is, I think the interaction in the map is very well done. I think, you know, a lot of this is going to be familiar. You have your different settlements throughout the different regions. You can see who owns them, where the armies are. You can see the fleets on the sea. You can see if a particular army is just a regular army led by a generic general, or if it's led by an heir, or even the king of the faction by the golden crown or the silver crown. And also the way you move around the map is also very satisfying. And what I mean by this is, I think you are able to explore the map at a decent pace. You can move a fairly decent distance in this map. So let's say I'm starting over here in Alabu, and in this same turn, the first turn, I can already reach this settlement over here of Refnesholt, or also Hafen here, of these two neighboring factions. And I can almost reach this other region over here of Angulus. It would take me only an extra turn to reach here. So I do think the movement in this map is quite good and satisfying to play. I think it has a decent flow in how you move your armies. It's not super slow, it's not also super quick, so you can't really like get ambushed by an army that starts over here and runs all the way to the fog of war to your lands. They can't do that. So I think it's a very decent distance what we have in this game. As a comparison, for example, in Shogun 2 Fall of the Samurai, I think the movement there is very slow. You take a long time, multiple turns, to go from one settlement to the other. I think some people might enjoy that more. Personally, I like the style we have in Attila much more. So I do enjoy this quite a lot. We also have our, well, I'm going to say our usual stances because I'm more accustomed to playing Warhammer 3. But yeah, we have the normal stance, we have the fortification stance, we have the raiding stance, we have ambush stance, and we also have the force march stance. A lot of this does not exist in Shogun 2, for example, and I did miss them. So I like having them here quite a bit. I also love that the fortified stance, let me just show it here. I also love that the fortified stance, I'm not sure if it says over here. It doesn't really say. But you'll notice at the bottom there you have deployables, 2 beds of sharp stones, and also 2 stake walls. This is something we don't have in Shogun 2, and we don't have it in Warhammer 3 either. What this does, which is really cool in my opinion, is that you go into this fortified stance, and not only do you have these bonuses, but if you get attacked, the enemy has to attack you in a makeshift camp. So you actually have an encampment with some walls and some choke points and even towers to defend you. That's where these deployables come into play, the sharp stones and the stake walls, where you have a more defensive position to play in. And I really, really like that. I really, really do. It's a very fun thing to have. So yeah, I do think interacting with the campaign map is excellent in this game, and I enjoy it very, very much. I think probably more than any other Total War game I've played. And I might be kind of like on a honeymoon period, and my opinion may change once I play the game even more. But I think right now this might actually be my favorite Total War game. I think I prefer this to Warhammer 3 and Shogun 2. I really, really enjoy this game. Moving on, next topic. I will also say that let's start actually with the combat. I think the combat in this game is one of its strongest points. I'm actually just gonna load up my campaign here so we can see a little bit more of the map and the armies. Oh, Thrones of Britannia style. Nice. I think the combat in this game is really, really well done. It is definitely, in my opinion, one of the strongest points in this game. For an historical game, I think you have a lot to play around in Total War Attila. Because I said this in Shogun 2, I'm going to say it again here. I was used to playing Warhammer 3, right? Where you have all different types of units. You have melee units that are strong, you have melee units which are just fodder, you have archers, you have crossbowmen, you have gunmen with actual gunpowder weapons like rifles, you have tanks, you have flying monsters, you have demons, you have a bunch of things which makes the game very, very replayable, unique and varied. And one of my fears when going for a historical game was that the variety was not going to be that interesting. That's not the case at all. You have a lot of variety in this game. You have a lot of different units. They all do different things. They all have their role to fill. So you can play around with many different army compositions. If you want to be more defensive, if you want to be more offensive, you can prepare your army according to what you expect the enemy armies to have. In this game, it's actually a very important thing to do with the Huns. I'll get into that later. But yeah, you have all bunch of things. You have spearmen, you have pikemen, you have swordsmen, you have axemen, you have two-handed weapon wielders, and then you also have missile units like slingers, you have skirmishers that throw javelins, you have archers, crossbowmen, you have siege artillery in the form of onagers and ballistas. You just have so much. And the other really cool thing about this game that I kind of miss in Warhammer 3, for example, is that a lot of these units have unique abilities. Like, for example, the spearmen are going to have a spear wall formation. The pikemen are going to have a pike wall as well, which makes them very strong to hold the line on a choke point, especially versus cavalry. You may have missile units which have other abilities, like, for example, precision shot, that gives you extra damage or gives you extra accuracy. You have units that scare the enemy just passively. Everybody around them, they scare them. They also might have shield wall, making them more defensive. So there's just a lot of possibilities and strategy for the available units and army compositions in this game, and I do think the combat is excellent, in part because of that. It is also a fun type of combat. I think the flow is quite good. I'm not sure if I'm going to call them negatives, but I think they could have been done better, is that I think some units can be a little bit too slow, or they can get a little bit clumped up in enemy melee a little bit too much. And missile units have a tendency, if you want to turn them around, let's say you have somebody over here facing over there, but you actually want to shoot something coming from this side, instead of the actual men, the entities in this 160 unit, instead of each of them just turning to face that way, the entire unit, like a square or a rectangle, the entire unit turns, which takes time and can be a little bit awkward during combats. That's something that I think could have been done better, and it can lead to some awkward situations, but overall it's not that much of an issue. And the combat, I think, just in general is very satisfying, and I think the best way to describe it is very rewarding. It's really, it feels really good to win battles in this game. It's really well done. I think something also to say, if you like cavalry, because I forgot to mention cavalry, because you have a lot of different types of infantry. Again, they all have their own roles. But you also have cavalry, and cavalry, if you like it, it is very powerful in this game. If you use cavalry properly, they are extremely powerful. They can just literally change the course of a fight by using them effectively. Cavalry is extremely good at killing off enemy skirmishers or enemy missile units, artillery pieces. This might all sound obvious, but it's worth mentioning. They're very strong at that, and also securing the flanks, and they're also very good for charging the enemy in the back, for the typical hammer and anvil strategy, where you're kind of pinning the enemy down with your front line, like for example spearmen or whatever, and then you go with your cavalry around and you charge them in the back, just breaking their backs, killing a bunch of them, shattering their morale. It is really satisfying and very rewarding to use. So very good. You also have generals. You also have them in Shogun 2, unlike, you know, Warhammer 3 where you have lords. So generals are going to be like a normal unit. They have a bunch of entities. In this case, I'm looking at a Nordic raid leader, which is a heavy X infantry. They have 160 entities in this unit, but they are the leader of this army. They will have certain abilities and items and traits which will make them better. They will make the army better. And they might also have, like I said, some abilities. Like this guy, for example, has Raised Banner. Raised Banner over here, which can give bonuses to everybody in the army. But overall, they're just another unit. They might be stronger, especially in the early game, where you only have basic units. They will be stronger than your average unit. But if you put them out in like an awkward position, they will die, just like anybody else. And you will get a massive morale penalty if your general gets killed. So you need to use your generals strategically, and you want to keep them safe. On the other hand, it also applies to the enemy army. If you are able to kill off their general, especially early in the fight, it's a massive morale penalty for the enemy. It can often even cause just mass routs from the entire enemy army, just giving you the victory in situations where you otherwise might not have been able to win. So I think managing your general and trying to take out the enemy general is a very fun aspect of combat in this game also. And I really enjoyed it in this game as well. Still in topic of combat, I think the maps are quite well done. I like the maps in this game. You know, you have different, let's call them biomes. You can fight in the snow, you can fight in the desert, in the woodlands, in the like just an open field. You can use terrain to your advantage. This is common for any, or at least most Total War games. This was for everyone that I played. It is still present here, and I do like that aspect of the game quite a lot. So very fun maps to play in also. Sieges, which could also be counted as a map, are amazing. I will say that sieges in Total War Attila are by far my favorite sieges of all Total War games I've tried. They are the best ones, by far. The sieges in Warhammer, for example, I don't like them. Straight up, I don't like sieges in Warhammer. I think they're very basic, and the strategy to beat sieges more efficiently, even if you are not trying to cheese them to extreme degrees, they're all kind of the same thing. They're not engaging, they're not... I mean, some people might like it. Personally, I don't enjoy them. I think a siege should be like its own thing. You should have a hard time beating a siege as the attacker. And you should have a stronger position and more advantage if you are the defender. In Warhammer, for example, I don't feel that. A lot of the time, I think killing off an army that's garrisoned inside of a settlement, even if they also have the garrison army inside, at times it's easier than killing them in open field battle. It depends on the faction, obviously, but a lot of the time this is true, which just makes me sad. In Shogun 2, sieges are cool, they're fun, they have their proper degree of difficulty with what I just mentioned. The attacker has a harder time, the defender has a lot of advantage, but in Attila it's even better. So, since I talked about Shogun, in Shogun 2, a siege, you're basically defending a fortress. It can either be just a small basic fort, or it can improve to like a city or a citadel, which has more layers of defense, but it's still just a fortified building. In Attila, you actually siege like an entire settlement. You are gonna see the various entry points, the gateways, the towers. You're gonna run across fields where, you might have farmers and their farms. You're gonna see the different buildings and houses inside a settlement. It's not just like a fortified position. It has a lot to cover. So really enjoyable, really fun, and again, very, very rewarding to fight sieges in this game. By far, my favorite experience in sieges in any Total War game that I tried. We also have naval warfare. So naval warfare is still not my cup of tea. It's not my favorite thing to do. I don't really enjoy naval warfare all that much. Let me see if I can find a better example of what I want to talk about here. No, here. Yeah. So, again with the comparison, in Warhammer 3, you don't have naval warfare. You can move your armies around by sea, as we had this example over here. Like I have my army on a boat, just going from one place to the other. Just like in Warhammer 3. In Shogun 2, if you want to move your armies, you have to make them board a ship, at least. In this case, what we have is, if you want to just move your army around, they are transported in transport ships. So each of these units would be present in a fight in a basic transport ship. It has some combat capabilities, but not a lot. But you also have actual fleets. So in this case, I have a proper fleet with an admiral. And, I have like melee ships, which can board enemy ships. I have archery ships, which will shoot arrows at enemy ships. It can even shoot fire arrows to burn them down. And we might even have artillery ships. We have a couple here. We have 3 artillery ships which toss out cannonballs or like flaming balls at the enemy ships. And you can also have ramming ships, which can just break apart the enemy hull by coming into contact with them. So you do have actual ship-on-ship battle in this game, naval warfare where you fight on the open sea. Like I said, it's not my favorite style of combat, but I will say that compared with Shogun 2, I think it's better in every single aspect. I think the combat flows better, it's faster, it's not as slow and clunky and awkward as Shogun 2 can be. I think it can be more enjoyable than what we have in base Shogun 2, in the way you control your ships and how you fight with them. I would say it can be a little bit more enjoyable in Fall of the Samurai, when you have like the big ships with bunch of cannons and you just blow enemy ships to pieces in explosions. It depends on what you like. But generally speaking, I think the naval warfare in this game is the best one compared to the other games I've played. So in Warhammer 3 it's non-existent, and it's better than Shogun 2. The other thing that makes it a lot better than Shogun 2 is the frequency of naval warfare. In this campaign, which lasted I think 121 turns, it was actually quite rare to engage in naval warfare. We had a little bit of it at the start, because we start as the Vikings up here, and the Vikings do start with the fleet by default, and you can go and use it a little bit. But for the most part, you can kind of ignore naval warfare for the majority of the game. Now, there is a real... what I want to say is, so compared with Shogun 2, where the AI just spams fleet after fleet after fleet, it's just... it gets very annoying and boring very quickly. In this game, it's a lot less frequent, which I enjoy a lot more. There is, however, a real motivation to have proper fleets. You don't have to have a lot of them, but having a couple of them is going to make a major difference. And the reason for it is, you can assault enemy settlements as long as they are in like a shore area and they have a port, as you can see over here. I could attack this settlement. I could engage in naval warfare with the fleet defenses of this port. Can I show it? Let me see. Yeah, so they would have some defense. I would engage in naval warfare with their defenses, or if they had a fleet over here, also with the fleet. And then, also very cool, you can also dock the ships on the shore, and the people inside will come out, and you control them as individual units, just like you would in a regular army, and then you can use them to storm the settlement and siege it, just as if you had a proper army, which is very cool and very, very fun. The other main incentive for having a proper fleet is, if you actually have an engagement on the sea, and you are fighting, let's say, with one army versus another army, and both of them are just in transport ships, it's going to be a very similar fight. But a proper fleet fighting versus transport ships is going to have a stupid advantage. Well, not stupid, it makes sense, right? They're actually proper military ships versus transport ships. So if you want to kill off enemy armies trying to invade you, and a very good example of this would be if you want to, let's say, defend this island, or the British islands where people can only invade you by sea, having a proper fleet can just straight up kill off entire enemy armies, so you don't have to face them on open field battle. So there's a real incentive to using a fleet for that purpose, which I really enjoy. So in this case, in this campaign, like around mid-game and late game, I started building my fleets. I think I have like 2 fleets, which for me were sufficient, or I actually have 3. Yeah, I have 2 full fleets, and then I had like a third fleet just for like defensive purposes or to kill off some stragglers. But yeah, I think naval warfare in this game is also very well done. The next topic I want to talk about is about diplomacy. So diplomacy in this game, if you have played Warhammer 3, it's not going to feel very different. I think diplomacy in Attila is well done. There is one thing that I miss in the diplomacy of this game that I have in Warhammer 3 and I wish I had here, which is being able to gift or trade settlements. I really wish I had it. Unfortunately, we don't, but I'll get into why I really miss that later in the video. But other than that, we have a lot of different options, right? So we can gift other factions, we can demand or request money from them. We can ask them to break their agreements with other factions. We can request military access so we don't trespass. We can make military or defensive alliances to form allies as you go through your campaign, you can declare war, obviously. You can join other factions in their wars, or you can request for them to join your wars. You can make non-aggression pacts, and you can also make them into tributary states, like vassals. Now, when I say that the diplomacy in this game is well done, it's because having played Warhammer 3, with Warhammer 3 having a little bit more features, I don't look at this game and say, wow, this diplomacy is so much better than in Warhammer, because it's not, right? It's kind of the same thing. But having come from Shogun 2, where the diplomacy, in my opinion, is one of the low points in that game, I am really happy to see it improved once again in Total War Attila. So again, in Shogun 2, it's very unreliable. You can have people which are very friendly towards you, and you can even have some agreements with them, and they will just straight up turn hostile and declare war on you out of nowhere. It just doesn't feel like... It's not a really enjoyable experience working in diplomacy in Shogun 2. At least it wasn't for me. In this game, it makes a lot more sense. It's more reliable. You can see exactly what's happening, you know. People might dislike you because you are a great power, or they might even like you because they like big empires. They will have their own predispositions which you can use to kind of gauge how you want to engage in diplomacy with them. You can also arrange marriages with your daughters or their daughters if you have single men, or if they have single men, for diplomatic advantages as well. So there's a lot you can do with diplomacy in this game, and me being a player which does enjoy diplomacy and alliances in Total War games, I really am glad that this game has a proper diplomatic gameplay. The other thing to talk about is difficulty. Now, I have only played this game on legendary difficulty, so you know, this may vary depending on difficulty, obviously. But I will say that this game is more difficult than the other Total War games that I've tried. And this is true, I think, for every single aspect. So I think the campaign gameplay, like managing your settlements, making sure the public order is in order, making sure the religion is in your favor, or you have to convert the enemies, or if you have to convert enemy buildings. There's a lot to do in terms of managing your campaign gameplay, and I think it's one of the hardest ones I found in the Total War games that I've tried. Combat-wise, the same thing. I think the combat in this game is the hardest one in the Total War games that I've played. Obviously, you know, once you get more accustomed to the gameplay and once you get more used to identifying what's dangerous, what isn't, what's powerful, what's weaker, some strategies, and when you learn how the AI typically works, it gets easier, obviously. But I do think that overall, this is the hardest Total War game that I've tried. And it's also in part of one of the main campaign mechanics, which is the Hunnic invasion. So, you know, title of the game, Total War Attila, Attila the Hun. So it does feature the Hunnic invasions in this time period. What this means is, up to a certain point in the campaign, especially if you are not playing a lot of very Eastern factions, and in my case I was more towards, you know, Northern Europe and Western Europe, that's what I expanded for, you don't have to deal with the Huns that much. But it gets to a point in the game where the Hunnic invasions start coming in full force. And you start getting spammed by Hunnic, army stacks. And they're not gentle, okay? They're not gentle. You will get attacked by 4, 5, 6 stacks at the same time. It's no joke. And the armies are not basic armies. They are powerful armies. You will have trouble dealing with these armies. At least I did. So I think that this game can be quite difficult. I would imagine some people maybe not enjoying that style of difficulty too much, or even just the, the overall mechanic of the Hunnic invasions too much. I am of the opinion that I think this game would be better without the Hunnic invasions, which is a little bit sad given, title of the game. But I do really feel like this game would have been better without the Hunnic invasions. Because if you look at the objectives, the overall campaign is partly kind of like a survival campaign. One of your main victory conditions is surviving until a specific time period. So, personally, I don't enjoy that part. I would much have preferred the game to be like a more regular style of Total War, where you just go around and conquer and you have different objectives, stuff like that, and not have to deal with the Huns. But, they're here, you have to deal with them, and it wasn't that bad of an experience, at least for me in this campaign. One other thing to mention is replayability. I think the replayability of Total War Attila is amazing, and it will provide you with a lot of very different and unique experiences. And the reason why I say this, we're actually going to go back to our main menu here, so I can show this off, is that, and I'll go back to the comparison with, let's say, Total War Warhammer, right? So in Warhammer, you have a lot of replayability because you have a bunch of different factors which will make each faction you play feel like a unique experience, right? Because every single faction will have a bunch of different lords, and each lord has its own unique traits and unique mechanics, some of them more unique than others, especially if they come from DLCs, and each faction is also very, very different from the other factions. Be it because of their preferred climates, their units, the magic they have available to them, the lords, the starting position, the potential alliances, but just they all have very, very unique mechanics. And if you go for historical games, you don't have that, right? You're not gonna have a demon faction or a dwarf faction or a human faction and an elf faction. It doesn't exist, right? Everybody's gonna be human here. And in Shogun 2, for example, you don't have a lot of variants. It's still fun to play with different factions because of, starting positions, different traits, different units, sure. But it's not as unique as what you have in Warhammer. In Attila, that also applies to a certain degree, but you have something that feels very different. So if we look at the Norseman here as an example, you start with the Norseman as you would in a typical Total War game. So you start with one settlement. In Warhammer, you typically start with one or two settlements. In Shogun 2, you also start with one or two settlements. That's the typical basic experience in which you play a Total War game. You also have that here, but you also have something very different. We have, for example, the Great Migrators, which don't even have a base settlement. They just don't have it. They're migrators, they're nomadic, they go around. And you basically roam the land, and then you can decide if you actually want to settle and where you want to settle and make that place your capital. So if you want to play with, for example, the Swabians and you want to make Rome your capital, you can do it. So it's a very different experience in this example right here. If you play with, let's say, nomadic tribes like the Huns or the White Huns, these would be the equivalent of a horde faction in Warhammer. You just kind of roam around destroying things, and your own army can double up as a settlement. You can have your own buildings built as you go around from one place to the other. So again, it's a very different experience. But even much more than that, you have stuff like the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire, doesn't start with 1 settlement or 2 settlements or 3 settlements. I think the Western Roman Empire starts with something like 67 settlements. Which, to me, is insane. I haven't given this a go because I don't think I would enjoy starting like this. But after finishing my Viking campaign, I'm actually a lot more interested in giving this one a try. But yeah, this, for example, would be a very unique experience. You don't start out trying to conquer land. Instead, you're gonna play more defensive, right? You may want to play to try and keep all of your territory, or you may want to give up on certain territory and kind of turtle up on more defensive positions. You're gonna have to manage an empire, not just 1 or 2 settlements. You have to deal with public order all over the place. You have to deal with rebellions. You're gonna get attacked by a bunch of different factions simultaneously. So it's going to be a very different experience. The Eastern Roman Empire, same thing. It's not as large, but it's still a very large empire to manage. And I really, really appreciate this in this game. I think it's a very fun type of angle that they give to this game, which I really like. Now, let's go back over here to our campaign, so I can show a little bit more things I want to mention. Come on. The next thing I want to talk about is the family tree. So again, this is something that we don't have in, let's say, Warhammer. We have, you can equip your lord, you can give buffs to your army, but you don't have an actual family. In Shogun 2, you do have a family, you have a family tree, but it's a much more simplified version of what we have here in Attila. So, in Total War Attila, I think we have a really cool and fun family tree management. Again, type of thing I would imagine some people might not enjoy too much, others will like. Initially, I thought this was gonna be kind of sucky, but now I actually really like it. So, you manage your initial faction leader. In this case, mine died of natural causes, not actually in combat, because you can also die here of disease and old age and stuff like that, which is kind of fun. Sometimes frustrating, but I do like that it exists. And then you have to handle, you have your sons, you can adopt people if you want to, they might have their wives, or you can arrange to find a wife by using a diplomatic action, or by using diplomacy with another faction if you want to. In turn, they will have children, they may also have illegitimate children. There's a bunch of things you can do. You also have governors, you can put people governing your different regions, which will give those regions buffs. The actual governor can also have items to buff the region. For example, you have an item here or a household thing that gives you public order +5. They also have their own traits, their own stats, their loyalty status, their influence, their skills. So a lot of different things to manage. It might seem a little bit overwhelming to start, but it's actually quite simple once you get used to them. And then, you have a bunch of different actions. You can assassinate people, you can secure loyalty, you can adopt, you can diminish popularity, gather support, embezzle funds, marry, divorce, just a lot of different things. You have your offices, you can put people to fill a specific office, which in turn will also give them buffs, so another layer of management. And I think it's really, really cool. I think the overall family tree management is very well done. The other thing I want to talk about is, I can show the technology tree. I think the technology tree is just, kind of a basic technology tree. There's not a lot to say here. I kind of wish it was a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more fleshed out, but I like what we have, so no real issues there. What I want to talk about is in terms of the victory conditions. I think the victory conditions for this game are a little bit too long, right? So the minor victory condition, the shortest one you can get, requires you, and this may change, between different factions, to control 30 settlements during the course of your campaign. 30 settlements might not seem like a lot, but it's actually quite a bit in Attila, because unlike Warhammer, you can't just go on a domination spree and just, move from here to there, capture this, go there, capture that, and keep on capturing with the same army just roaming around the land. You can't do that, because you need to manage the religion of that place. You may have to convert the buildings. The public order is very hard to manage at the start. So it does take more time to develop and expand your empire in this game than it does in other Total War games. So it's actually quite a bit, 30 settlements. But that's not the main problem I have, right? You have a couple of other things here which make sense. I don't have any issues with any of the things over here. The main thing I don't like is the first one. Survive until the following date, spring 425. This, to me, I would prefer this didn't exist. I know it's a whole thing, surviving the Hunnic invasions and blah blah blah, but I just don't like it. And the reason for it is, spring 425, it might not seem like much because you start on year 395, I believe, but each year is composed of 4 turns, representing the different seasons, so spring, summer, winter, and autumn. So this would mean you start at 395, you have to go to 425, that's 30 years, 30 times 4 is 120, so at the minimum, you're gonna have a campaign lasting 120 turns. That's a lot. Depending on what you're accustomed to, I was accustomed to Warhammer 3, where like a minor victory, I would complete it around, depending on the faction, turn 40 to turn 60 or 70. 120 for me is long victory condition type of territory. So I do think it's a little bit long. In my campaign, for example, I think I had things completed around, I don't even know, like year 418 or something like that. So a lot of these final turns were just kind of like press in turn, fortify my defenses, make sure I'm not getting attacked or losing territory. But other than that, it wasn't hard at all. Because if you look at the diplomacy here, I know it's gonna seem a little bit strange, some things you're gonna find here, but just bear with me. I am at war with 3 different factions. I am at war with the Abdanians, which are dead. They're basically dead. All they have is this fleet over here, which I couldn't even kill, because if I try to chase them, they just run away, and they run around in circles, you cannot catch them. Very annoying. I just gave up on it. They're there. They basically don't exist. I got declared war by the Roman separatists because I was kind of neighboring them here. They took a town over here. I had my god damn it, my border over here. They declared war on me for whatever reason. They're basically powerless. They cannot do anything to me. They're very weak. And finally, I am at war with the Huns. And this really is my only, or was my only challenge at this point. And I want to mention, it was a challenge because I chose to have that challenge. Because during the course of this game, I was actually very friendly with the Huns. I had a non-aggression pact with the Huns. Okay? I basically gave up on it. I declared war on them simply because, Attila is over there. He is the namesake of the game. I wanted to see if I could get an achievement by killing him. I actually did. But I did not need to go to war with the Huns. So basically, I was at year 418 at war only with the Abdanians, which were essentially dead. All I had to do was press in turn until 425 and win the campaign. Which to me, just seemed unnecessary time spent in the campaign. We can also look over here at the records, I think. We'll see here victory objective complete. as soon as we got to 425 AD, spring. I guess I'll cover this a little bit more once I go over the campaign overview. But yeah, I do think that victory conditions could have been done better. I wish there was a shorter victory condition for... you know, if you just took out this line, I think it would be fine. I think it would be fine. This 30 could also be a little bit smaller, but overall I don't have much of an issue with it. But generally speaking, I prefer more focused objectives than just saying control 30 settlements. Like, for example, this makes sense to me. I start as the Vikings. One of my objectives is I want to control the entire Scandinavian region for myself or through tributary states and military allies. This to me is a cool objective. Looting or sacking also makes sense. We're Vikings, so I want to loot or sack a certain number of settlements. I would also need to earn some money from raiding. Again, it's thematic. Researching technologies, I mean, it's just generic, it shouldn't be here. Maintain a certain number of units, same thing. Naval units, same thing again. I would just remove this, and this from the minor victory, and in my opinion it would have been much better. So yeah, I think that's it about what I wanted to cover about this game. I do think... I really hope I'm not saying this just because of the honeymoon period, but I do think this is my favorite Total War game from the ones I've tried. It's a really cool experience. If you want to try out a Total War game, I can definitely recommend Total War Attila. Just be mindful of the whole Hunnic invasion aspect of the gameplay, which I imagine some people might not enjoy. But overall, very good game. I don't really have a lot of bad things to say about the game. I think it really just is, you know, the victory conditions could have been better. I think certain things in combat could flow a little bit better. But other than that, honestly, I think it's just very solid, very well done Total War game. Not a lot of bad things to mention. Alright, so now that we've covered this, let's go for our campaign overview here, which I like to discuss every time I win one of these. So, as we saw at the start, we began over here in Alabu, in this region of Scandinavia. This is, you know, Denmark. And we are neighboring our two other Viking factions. We have the Geats over here and we have the Danes over here. Now, if I remember correctly, the Danes... they don't like you too much. They don't hate you, but they don't really like you too much. The Geats, however, start off as being your friends. So one thing you can do, if you want, you can engage in diplomacy with them and, you know, just trade, maybe even make a non-aggression pact or make them a defensive ally or military ally as you go through the campaign. That's certainly an option that you have. But... this reminds me of something I wanted to cover and I forgot. But I actually began my campaign by, on turn 1, just killing off the Geats. Or at least taking their capital. And the reason for it is, in this game, you have multiple settlements throughout the map. But some of them are going to be minor settlements, like this one and this one, which have 4 building slots at the most. And then you also have the capital of that region, which has more build slots, and the actual city is more fortified, it's more defensive. So in this case it has walls, where these over here don't. And gates and stuff. And also the way you manage public order in this game, and sanitation and stuff like that, I think it's a cool system, because, you know, handling public order, handling religion, handling sanitation, I think it makes for a fun experience in managing your settlements as your campaign goes through. I think it's a fun element and well done. However, just having like a minor settlement, it's going to be kind of hard to maintain that settlement in a stable position. I can give an example of this. I captured the settlement down here in Pompello, and I only have the minor settlement. I don't have the capital line, and I don't have this minor settlement here either. I need to constantly have a full army on this region to try and keep it stable. If I take out my army, the public order immediately goes into -14. So I cannot do this. Even having the building that gives me, if you see over here on this side, it gives me a +10 bonus to public order, I still cannot maintain this settlement without an army inside. So in this game, it is kind of difficult to keep single small settlements. So you are incentivized, if possible, to take control of the entire region. So first thing I did was kill off the Geats, even though they were my potential allies. Kill them off, took control of the capital, and then my next goal was to take out the Danes also. So took off the Geats. I actually had to kill off the Angles here first, because they start the game as being very hostile towards you. Oh, give me a second, please. Sorry, got a phone call. As I was saying, I had to deal with Angulus, because the Angles over here start off as being very hostile towards you. So I killed them off, took their settlement. I actually had this settlement for a very, very long time by its own, because I made friends with the Saxons. They're one of my very few allies that I have. Not even allies, we're just having a non-aggression pact over here. So they were my friends, essentially. And I didn't want to take out their land. I didn't want to make an enemy when I had a friend over here. I didn't see the need for it. And over here in Flavum, we had the Franks, which we take out later, but not right now. So I took out the Angles. Then I moved on to taking out the Danes over here. And that made it so that I killed the other Viking factions, took control of this entire region, which is actually a fairly decent defensible position, because people can only invade this area by sea. The same thing over here, and for Alabu we have a natural choke point which I actually controlled. Now at this point, once I had control over this, my goal initially was I wanted to go and invade the British Isles, because this area starts with the Celts and also with part of the Roman Empire, and I wanted to kill off the Celts here. I think it's Celts, not Celts, right? Yeah, I think it's Celts. I wanted to kill the Celts and then start killing off the Roman Empire as well, because with the Vikings, you start the game at war with the Western Roman Empire. And another very cool thing about this is, if you start killing and capturing stuff from the Western Roman Empire, most factions in the area will like you for it, because they all dislike the Roman Empire. Let me see if I can see it here. If we look at the top... Yeah, so right above the total 188, you're gonna see military actions against Italia and raiding and blockading the Eastern Roman Empire, and a little bit above that, raiding and blockading the Western Roman Empire. So they like people that fight the Roman Empire. So yeah, my objective really was, I wanted to go for the British Isles, take control of this corner over here, then start killing off the rest of the Roman Empire over here, and take control of the entire islands, which again is a very nicely defensive position because it's an island. In so doing, by killing Roman people over here, people around this area would like me more for it, so I could form more friendships, more non-aggression, more trade, and more potential alliances, and then keep moving toward, just deeper into the Western Roman Empire, capturing the entirety of Western Europe and the Iberian Peninsula over here. That was my goal. What ended up happening though was, by me killing off the Vikings over here and killing off the Angles, people in this area did not like me too much. So the Franks, for example, started hating me. They didn't declare war on me, but they hated me at some point. And the people over here, I think it was the Rugians, they disliked me a lot and they declared war on me. So with that, I had to postpone my objective of going west, and I had to take care of this region here. So I killed off the Rugians, I killed off the other people in this area as well, took control of another full region, which was actually quite positive for me. And then, much to my sadness, because I didn't want this, the people on Eastern Europe also didn't like me. And if we look at them right now, because I think we have some over here, you are the Sclavinians. These guys, they like me now, actually. Because I started killing the Huns. But they hated me. At this point in the game, where I was only over here and killing off these guys, the people over here hated me. And there's actually a reason why this entire section of the map, this part over here, is desolate. Because I had enemies over here, which I had to kill off to stop them from attacking me. But, like I mentioned before, keeping settlements is not easy. You have to convert the religion, you have to convert the buildings, and this area is also a very cold area, which was being detrimental for my objectives. So what I ended up doing was, I conquered the area of my enemy, killed them off, but then I razed every single settlement. I didn't want to keep them because I could not keep them. It was being too hard to try and handle these settlements here. And I also wanted to go west, so again. So I razed this entire area became desolate, which means I am no longer neighboring anyone over here. So these guys, even though they hate me, they had their own things to worry themselves about in this region, and they left me alone for the majority of the game. The people below me here, who are you guys? The Thuringians, the Langobards, and the Saxons, they always kinda liked me, so I just left them be. And once I was able to deal with the eastern part over here and, kill them off, I then began my invasion of the British Islands. So I went from Alabu with my fleet. I actually had a proper fleet, as well as 2 armies. We moved west, and we came to invade this region here of Thuesis. Now, this area starts as territory of, I believe, what are they called? The Caledonians, I believe, which are Celts. So they only had 1 settlement, so I killed them off right there and there. Took their city. Actually, yeah, I didn't kill them off. They ran away. They went into migration mode, so they just roamed around the map without any settlements. And they wanted peace, so I just gave them peace. They were very weak, I didn't care about them. And eventually they actually went down here and captured the settlement. Good for them. So I took this over from them. Then I moved down, took the area from the Picts, which only had 1 settlement also, but those I killed off. And then I had the Saxons over here, which I left them be, because again, they are my friends. I didn't want to engage in combat with them. I left them in peace. And I went west to attack the Abdanians. Now, the Abdanians at this point, they actually were one of the most powerful factions in the game. They had a lot of territory. I think they controlled this entire region over here. So I declared war on them, took this settlement, and then quickly moved over here and took control over this southern part of Britain. I then spent a couple of turns in this region just trying to maintain public order, develop my infrastructure. At this time, I also finally discovered that priests and agents in general actually have actions you can use on the map. I didn't know about that. So I used them to convert the populace and keep public order, just making sure that the British Isles were safe. Even with Saxons over here, they were my friends, so I didn't mind about this. I was actually right now trying to instill revolt in this region. So if it rebels, rebels would take the town and I could take it from them. But I didn't get that point. Once I took control of this entire island, I started moving downward. Or actually, sorry, no, I lie. The Franks, right, the Franks had this region here. So, I killed the Abdanians, part of them ran away, that's why we have this little fleet still over here doing nothing. But then, I attacked the Franks, I declared war on them. I actually had a point in the game where I had a lot of wars. I was kind of afraid of it, but I got through it fine. I killed off the Franks over here. They were kind of busy in the region of Italy, trying to kill off the Romans as well. So I took this over from them. They didn't have a lot of defensive forces. Took this from them. Then I took their starting position here in Flevum. Took the Colonia Agrippina. And then I took some more territory in this portion over here. I think they were allied with the Gauls and also Britain, which might have had some stuff over here. I just killed all of them off. Took this entire territory for my own. And then started moving southward. So I had a couple of armies moving in this region in direction of the Iberic Peninsula, right? I even began conquering over here this top part of Spain, but didn't go any further. I didn't see the need for it because at this point I had more than enough for my victory condition. I have 37 as you can see. But I also conquered down here in the region of Italy because the Franks had taken control of a lot of this area. So all you see over here controlled by me, you know, Roma, Neapolis, and Rhegium, and blah blah blah. This was all territory owned by the Franks. So to kill them off, I took control over this. Now, something that was a little bit weird that I did not expect in the middle of all this is, if you remember what I've been talking about, I was taking territory over here. Initially my goal was to kill Romans, but the other factions around here killed them for me. So they killed all of the Romans over here, they killed all of the Romans over here as well, and they were also killing the Romans in Italy. So my initial plan kind of went away, right? I was killing mostly barbarian factions. In so doing, the Romans liked me a lot. So I actually engaged in diplomacy with the Romans, which was not my initial goal at all. I had, and I still do, I have trade agreements, non-aggression pacts, and military access with both the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. So I made friends with them, which actually gave me a lot of money by trading. You can see over there income 2000 and income 2000 was over here as well. Still keeping my good relationships with the Saxons and the Longobards, which meant I didn't have to take the region over here. And by this point, I didn't feel the need to go any further, right? Because, like I said, I had more than enough settlements to just win the campaign. I did not feel the need to engage in more wars. It would be pointless. So, at this point, I had a lot of forces. I think Attila is actually one of the games where you have the most amount of armies. At least, especially early on, you get a lot of armies, much more so than in Warhammer, for example. In Warhammer 3, I typically have like 1 or at most 2 armies by turn 40. In this game, you can have 2 armies by turn 3, if you want to. But if I look over here, for example, yeah, so if I want to raise an army, I can't even. I have 10 out of 10 armies already. Some of them were stationed in regions to keep them safe and keep public order, or because I was expecting invasion at some point to defend. And a lot of them were just on the offensive, conquering territory. So I had a lot of different forces. I had 3 out of 5 fleets. I am strength ranking number 1, so we are the most powerful faction in the entire game. So I did not feel the point of starting any other war. Like I said, I just declared war on the Huns because I wanted to have some fun and not just skip turn after turn, and see if I could get an achievement for it, which I did, so it worked out in my favor. The one thing I wanted to mention, which I forgot, in terms of the what I wish would have done better. I mentioned in the diplomacy screen that there was one feature which I missed from Warhammer 3 that I would love to have in this game, which is the ability to gift or trade settlements. I think it's really important because I mentioned the difficulty of keeping control over like a single settlement, but there's a lot of occasions where you are, going across the map, killing off your enemies and conquering their territory, and you will end up, for example, conquering one minor settlement. Let's say, for example, over here, I had control of Angulus, but my ally has the capital. So I only have, I have three options. One option is declare war on my ally and take the capital to myself, and I would take control of the entire region. That's one option, sure, but I'm buying a war that I might not want to, and that kind of seems pointless. I could just try and keep it, and keep an army in there maintaining order and defending from rebellions and stuff like that. It's kind of a hassle, but you can do it. Or you can just raise it. But if you raise it, you're gonna reduce the fertility of that region. You get a public order penalty for a couple of turns. You're not getting money out of that place. So I don't like just raising territory just because. So it really feels like the game puts you in a very awkward position because you can't trade it, right? I would have very easily, at many points in this campaign, conquered something that I did not want and then trade or gift to a neighboring faction in trade of, like an alliance, maybe some money, maybe trading for a different settlement. I do feel like being able to trade settlements and negotiate for settlements opens up a lot of strategic elements in this game, and it just makes the campaign flow a lot better and it's a lot more fun. Same example, right? When I was conquering the land over here in Eastern Europe, I couldn't keep that land. I didn't want it. It wasn't going to be profitable for me. I would need to keep armies here, standing by, where they could have been elsewhere conquering more desirable territory. So with the available options to me, I had to raise it. What would have been much better was I had no interest to keep conquering east, so I could have very easily traded territory with the eastern factions, right? I could have made alliances over here, or at least non-aggression and trade agreements. Maybe even get some trade agreements with the factions down here. Without having that ability, I can't do it, and I really, really missed it, and I wish I was able to do it. But yeah, overall, my friends, that was my campaign. I am not sure if there's a lot to see over here in the records that's particularly interesting, but, my capital, Alabu, 9 provinces owned. So provinces are like the full area with all the settlements. I have 9 complete ones. In total, I had 37 regions. Prosperity affluent, Imperium intimidating, our faction leader. What else could I want to see? Stats. 121 turns. We captured 42 settlements. We lost 3 settlements, I'm guessing to other factions or rebellions. Most settlements held 37. Current provinces held 13. Wait, what? Provinces owned 9, provinces held 13. I don't know what this is, but okay. Edicts issued, this is just something you can do with the governor. We have 5 because we had at most 5 governors. Built 214 buildings, 24 technologies, 13 civil, 11 military. 4 total resources, this is like iron, olives, timber, stuff like that. In diplomacy, we encountered 34 factions, we destroyed 13 factions, we established 1 tributary or puppet state. Did I? I forgot. Oh, I remember. Never mind. Yeah, initially, when I killed off the Angles, I made them a puppet faction. That's right. That's right. But the problem was, even with them being a tributary state, they still hated me. Very, very much so. So I didn't want to have, my region compromised because of them. So I just killed them off eventually. Right. My current wars are 3, as we saw. At most, I was engaging in 5 wars at the same time. Current allies, 0. Most allies, 0. I was not able to make any alliances at all, be it defensive or military. I wanted to have a defensive alliance with the Saxons, but it was not meant to be. We made 4 trade agreements, again. My diplomacy was not very good because I was killing off barbarian factions, and that's what most of Europe is, so they didn't really like me too much. So yeah, we basically had trade with the Western Roman Empire, Eastern Roman Empire, with the Saxons because we made friends with them very, very early. And then the final one was some other faction. I don't even remember too well which one it was. Total income, 3,300,000. Current income, 43,000. Income from tax, 2,433,000. Income from trade, we made 300,000. From looting, raising, and sacking, 26,000. From raiding, 5,000. I didn't end up raiding too much. I just made this for the victory condition. I didn't really play this campaign like a Viking. I made it more so to build an empire, which not really very Viking-ish, but I like the way I like doing it. So ransom from battle captives, I never took the money because it was always such a low amount of money. I would just take the replenishment. Highest ever income, 48,000. Interest, I have no clue what this is. I mean, I know what interest is, I just don't know. I didn't know there was interest. Okay. I spent 3,270,000. Recruitment, blah, blah, blah. My military forces established were 13. Current forces, yeah, so 10 armies and 3 navies. Most concurrent forces, 13. Armies, 10. Yeah. Fleets, 3. I had 12 generals. I lost 6 generals. Really? Oh, right. Okay. I am not sure if this counts as them dying of natural causes, because I had a lot of them dying by natural causes. I think in actual combat, I don't remember losing a lot of them. I think I lost like 1 or 2 at most. Recruited 390 units. Land ones were 322. Naval ones were 68. Killed 1,115 and lost 66. Very good ratio. We fought 116 battles, 35 of them personally fought. A lot of them were auto-resolved because a lot of the fights are just very, very easy. Land battles 55, naval battles 14. Port battles 1. Settlement battles 31. Siege battles 15. Total victories 113, kind of same thing. Total defeats 3. Yeah, so my generals lost at most were 3. Settlement battle defeats 3. Yeah, so I'm guessing I didn't lose any open battle, but I did lose defenses. I'm guessing because like they weren't defended and rebels rebelled and stuff. This part, I looted 3 settlements. I peacefully occupied 35. I sacked 3 and I razed 2. Those were the ones in Eastern Europe. Recruited 9 agents, 3 of each type. Agents are very good in this game. I like using them very, very much. We lost 2 of them. We carried out 47 agent actions. Successful ones were 33. Most of them were champion type because I was killing people left and right. Failed 14. And there we go. So yeah, that's my campaign overview. Looking at the map, everything in orange is my territory. So we, Scandinavia, the British Isles with our friends, most of Central Europe, Italy, top of Spain, And that was essentially it. So yeah, that's it for my thoughts and campaign overview on Total War Attila. Like I said, I really enjoyed my time in this game. I am currently playing, again for fun, with the Picts, which is also being a fun experience. I've taken over the British Isles and I'm now starting to invade Central Europe. Liking it a lot as well. Looking forward to try out a lot of other different different factions, and also different starting styles, like the Roman empires, which seems interesting to me. And overall, I just want to play this game a lot more because I really, really enjoy it. With that, my friends, I want to thank you all for being here in the channel with me, watching this video about Total War Attila. I hope it was enjoyable, useful, whatever. If you want to, leave a question, share some thoughts about the game, say hi, leave a comment below. If you enjoy this type of content, consider subscribing for more. Many more videos coming out soon. It is also a free and easy way to support the channel. I hope to see you all in some other video, my friends, and until then, stay safe, everyone.